Finally, we got what we asked for. It's about damn time. After demanding it, clamoring for it, Team USA finally puts Caitlin Clark into the starting lineup. However, everything that glitters ain't gold.
Did Caitlin Clark just silence the haters with one game? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments. Because after Team USA's dominant win over New Zealand, something changed. Not just on the scoreboard, not just in the highlights, and not just in the usual social media reaction that follows every Caitlin Clark performance.
CC got me ready to go ball, y'all. You see that performance from the real point guard today? Man, I'm about to go to the gym and get a bucket. She got me ready to go get a bucket. What a game. What a game. Caitlin Clark put on an absolute display today versus New Zealand. Finally in the starting lineup. It took long enough.
The real change was in how people were forced to watch her. Before this game, there was still doubt around Caitlin Clark. There were still people questioning whether the hype had gone too far. There were still people acting like she needed to be handled carefully, protected from bigger moments, or slowly eased into this level.
Caitlin Clark leads all players through 4 games with 51 points and 25 assists. And today she had 14 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals. Leads all players through 4 games. The most points and the most assists. And the most efficient of them all as well.
Even with all the attention around her, there was still this feeling from some corners that the conversation had gotten ahead of the proof. But this game pushed back on that, because against New Zealand, Clark did not just have a nice outing in a comfortable Team USA win. She gave people another reminder that her impact is different. She made the game feel different, and by the end of it, the same people who wanted to minimize everything around her had a much harder job.
Caitlin Clark, we got to get into some of these highlights, man. I don't know what took them so long to start her, but it was about damn time, and boy, did she deliver with her first start with Team USA, man. Let's take a look at some of these clips. We got Caitlin Clark coming up the floor. This is the real point guard right here. Look at the playmaking, okay? Defender trailing, boom, look at that. Throwing that ball to the weak side. Paige Beckers right there, cash out. Those two together, oh my God, I wish they could play together for the Fever Chiefs. Oh my goodness.
That is why this performance mattered. Heading into the game, the discussion around Clark had already become part of the story. That happens with her now almost every time she steps on the court. It is never just about the next opponent. It is never just about the stat line. It is always about what people think she is, what they think she is not, and what they are still waiting to see. That is what made this game bigger than it should have been on paper, because Team USA beating New Zealand is not supposed to be shocking. A powerhouse beating a weaker opponent is not the headline. The headline becomes bigger when the player under the brightest spotlight changes the way the whole game feels. And that is exactly what happened here. From the moment Clark got involved, the flow looked sharper, the pace looked more dangerous, the spacing felt more stretched. Defenders had to think about her the second she touched the ball. That is the part people still struggle to explain when they talk about Caitlin Clark. They want to reduce her impact to just scoring or just highlights. But that is too small. Her real effect starts before the shot even goes up. She changes how defenses behave. She changes where defenders stand. She changes how much room everyone else gets. And once that starts happening, the whole game opens up. That is why one of the biggest takeaways from this performance was not just whether she scored, it was how often she made the defense react. A defender has to pick her up higher. A help defender hesitates a little longer. A passing lane opens because 2 people are worried about the same player. Those are the things that do not always scream at you from a box score. But if you watch closely, they tell the real story. And that story looks familiar, because this is what Clark has done everywhere. She did it in college. She has done it in the WNBA. And now, in a Team USA setting, you could see the same pattern again. The moment she settles into a game, the geometry changes. The defense stops looking comfortable. Everyone around her starts benefiting from the attention she creates. That is why this performance felt bigger than just one result. It was another piece of proof. And the strongest part of that proof was that it unfolded in front of everyone. This was not one of those quiet games where supporters have to dig through advanced numbers and explain why it mattered. This was visible. This was the kind of performance where even casual viewers could feel the difference. You did not need a breakdown board to understand it. You could see the pressure she puts on a defense. You could see the extra fear in the coverage. You could see the way the game sped up when she was involved. That is when the conversation starts changing, because doubt survives best when things feel theoretical. It survives when people can say, maybe later. It survives when people can say, let us wait and see. It survives when they can act like the flashes are not enough. But games like this damage that kind of argument. Games like this force people to move from theory to reality. They force people to stop debating the possibility and start dealing with the evidence. And for Clark, that matters because she has spent so much time as the center of a debate that was never only about basketball. The Caitlin Clark conversation has always had layers. There is the skill, there is the production, there is the attention, there is the pressure, there is the fan reaction, there is the media reaction. There are the people who celebrate everything she does. And there are the people who seem determined to lower the temperature every time she proves something. So when she has a game like this, the reaction is never small. It hits harder because the buildup was already emotional. That is why the phrase silenced the haters actually makes sense here, even if people usually overuse it. Because this was not about one critic being embarrassed by one stat line. It was about a whole style of criticism losing some of its power. If your argument was that Clark still needed to prove she could affect games at this level, moments like this are a problem for you. If your argument was that the hype was carrying her more than the basketball, moments like this are a problem for you. If your argument was that Team USA should keep treating her like a minor piece instead of a genuine weapon, moments like this are a problem for you. That is what changed. Not that every critic disappeared, not that every debate ended forever, but the balance shifted. The next time people try to question what she brings, there is now another performance sitting there in the evidence pile. Another reminder that her impact is not imagined. Another reminder that when she is trusted, things happen. And maybe that is the biggest point of all, because this game did not just say something about Caitlin Clark. It said something about Team USA too. It raised the question that keeps hanging over all of this. How much more proof do they need before fully leaning into what she creates? That is where this story gets really interesting. The early debate around Clark often focused on whether she could handle the level. But after performances like this, that question starts to fade. The new question becomes whether the team is ready to fully trust what is right in front of them. Whether they are ready to stop thinking of her as a luxury and start thinking of her as a true engine. Whether they are ready to admit that her presence changes the shape of the game in a way that very few players can. Because once people see it, they cannot unsee it. That is what happened against New Zealand. People saw the effect. They saw how quickly the pressure builds when Clark has the ball. They saw how the defense stretches. They saw how the tempo changes. They saw the confidence. They saw the control. They saw the kind of impact that makes you stop talking about potential and start talking about necessity. And that is dangerous for doubters, because doubters want uncertainty. Clark gave them clarity. They want to keep the conversation vague. Clark made it concrete. They want to act like the belief around her is exaggerated. Clark gave people another reason to believe even more. That is why this game landed the way it did. Yes, Team USA won comfortably. Yes, the result itself matters, but the bigger story is that this was one of those games where the narrative around a player tightened. One of those games where the room for dismissal got smaller. One of those games where people had to admit, even if quietly, that the player they were doubting keeps changing what happens when she is out there. And that is why this felt like more than just another win. Before the game, there was doubt. After the game, there was proof. Before the game, people were still asking whether Caitlin Clark belonged in this conversation at the highest level. After the game, the better question felt like this: how far can she take it if Team USA gives her even more? So let me ask you again, did Caitlin Clark just silence the haters with one game, yes or no? Let me know in the comments. And if you are still watching, drop silenced in the comments.
We got Nate Tibbetts taking the podium, man. I really want to know what's the reason for Caitlin Clark being benched in this championship game. I really want to know. Let's take a listen to what Coach Nate Tibbetts had to say, man.
Did Team USA create this whole mess the second they benched Caitlin Clark? Comment yes or no, because what happened next turned a simple lineup decision into one of the biggest talking points in women's basketball. This was supposed to be about Team USA winning. Instead, it became about why one of the most dangerous players in the world kept getting treated like a role player. And the wildest part is this. The more they tried to limit Caitlin Clark, the bigger she looked by the end of the tournament.
I gotta look at y'all with the side eye right now. I gotta look at them with the straight up side eye right now as Caitlin Clark was benched in the championship game for the United States. Absolute joke. Absolute joke.
That is why this story blew up. Not just because of the benching, but because the benching made no sense once you saw what happened on the court. Clark came into this run after a long layoff and still ended up winning MVP.
Cheers. How about it? Oh, no, they mad. They big mad. They are flaming right now. Caitlin Clark in her return to basketball, like 8 months off, all these injuries, all of this stuff. The girl shows up and wins MVP just like that.
Team USA finished 5-0, and she averaged 11.6 points and 6.4 assists per game in her first games in 8 months. Think about how insane that is. Most players after that much time away are just trying to find rhythm again. Caitlin Clark came back and looked like the most impactful player in the tournament. But instead of fully handing her the keys, the coaching decisions made this whole thing feel strange from the start. They had a generational point guard, but instead of putting the ball in her hands and letting her control the game, they used weird lineups, played her off the ball, and made it feel like they were trying to take away the exact thing that makes her special.
Caitlin Clark is the real MVP, and this wasn't based on fan voting, I don't think. This is the real deal. This is the real deal. Let's take a look at what she did. First in points, first in assists, first in true shooting percentage, first in plus minus, first in 2-point field goal percentage. Caitlin Clark doing what the GOAT does. Get this CBA signed, because this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning.
And that is where fans started to lose their minds. Because once people saw the starting lineups, this stopped feeling like normal coaching experimentation and started feeling personal. It felt like disrespect. Other players were getting trusted first, while Clark, the player drawing the most attention and changing the energy of the team, was coming off the bench or being treated like a second option.
CC is the GOAT. We've been telling y'all, and it is what it is. Caitlin Clark is the MVP of the 2026 FIBA Women's World Cup. How about that? We had Kara Lawson trying to bench the girl. They putting her in with all these funky, funny lineups. They keep starting Chelsea Gray every game. They got her coming up. They had Angel Reese start a damn game before. Paige Becker started before. Shit, they might have put me in a game. Pardon the language. They might have started me in a game before Caitlin Clark, okay? This was absolute insanity, but this is a beautiful sight to see, okay? Caitlin Clark got her feet wet. She got a taste of it again, okay? She got her legs under her. She got that confidence. Y'all see that long three falling, hitting nothing but nylon? Listen, Caitlin Clark is about to do it to him this year. She about to do it to him this year. You can play games and act like you don't know, but deep down, you already know what time it is.
And fans could feel it, because every time Clark stepped on the floor, the game changed. The pace changed. The spacing changed. The defense had to react differently. That is what made this so explosive. If Clark was struggling, maybe the staff could defend it. If Clark looked overwhelmed, maybe the benching angle would make sense. But that is not what happened. She thrived anyway. She won MVP anyway. And that is the kind of outcome that makes every earlier coaching decision look worse in hindsight. That is why this story kept growing, because it was not just about basketball anymore. It became a story about control, about who gets trusted, about whether some coaches and power structures still seem uncomfortable with how quickly Caitlin Clark has taken over the sport. And once fans believe a player is being held back on purpose, every coaching decision gets judged through that lens. That is when the pressure becomes massive. Because in sports, you can survive a loss. You can survive one bad game. What is harder to survive is making a decision the public thinks is obviously wrong, than watching the player prove that public right. That is the real fallout here. Benching Caitlin Clark turned into the kind of decision that can define a coach. Because if you try to shrink a star like that, and she still ends up as the biggest story, the question becomes brutal. What exactly were you trying to accomplish? And that is the lesson sitting underneath this whole Team USA story. Do not overmanage Caitlin Clark. Do not force her into roles that take the ball out of her hands. Do not build a system that suppresses the very thing that makes her special. Build around it. Support it. Get out of the way. Because when coaches try to correct Clark's style, it does not help the team. When they trust her, the offense changes. The energy changes. The results change. And this is why the MVP matters so much. It was not just a trophy. It was a verdict. It was Clark answering all of this with production. Not with talking, not with excuses, with results. 5-0 as a team. MVP. 11.6 points, 6.4 assists. First games in 8 months. That is not hype. That is proof. So when people ask why this story exploded, that is your answer. It exploded because Team USA tried to manage Caitlin Clark like she was just another piece. But by the end of the tournament, she looked like the center of the whole thing. That is why the backlash got louder instead of fading away. That is why fans kept talking about the lineups instead of just celebrating the wins. And that is why any coach watching this should take the lesson seriously. You do not build around Caitlin Clark by shrinking Caitlin Clark. You build around her by trusting what is obvious. Because the more they tried to hold her down, the bigger she became. And that might be the most important part of this entire story. Team USA may have won the games, but Caitlin Clark won the argument. If you're still watching, comment yes if you think Team USA got this wrong from the start.
Team USA sweep the World Cup qualifiers with their 5th straight win against Spain, and Caitlin Clark gets MVP for the FIBA World Cup qualifiers.
In what should be a surprise to absolutely nobody, Caitlin Clark has been named Most Valuable Player. Puerto Rico got into the World Cup. Wow.
Did Caitlin Clark just prove she is the biggest needle mover in women's basketball? Comment yes or no if you think she did. Caitlin Clark had not played a single basketball game in 239 days. No rhythm, no real run, no chance to ease back in, and after all that time away, Team USA still did not start her in the first game.
Well, it's what we've all been waiting for. It's been 239 days, I believe I saw, since Caitlin Clark has been on a basketball court hitting a three-pointer. Today, we were all witness. Caitlin Clark is back. She did not start for USA Basketball, for Team USA. The response to that is, yeah. And I knew it would be.
But somehow, that made what happened next even louder, because Clark came off the bench in her Team USA debut, played just 19 minutes, dropped 17 points and 12 assists, and instantly helped turn this FIBA qualifying tournament into must-watch TV.
Caitlin Clark had a berserk 17 points. Wow. 4 of 5 from three-point range, 12 assists in 19 minutes and 21 seconds. Absolute, pure, unadulterated domination.
According to the source material, the 5-team USA games pulled the highest viewership numbers in FIBA qualifying tournament history. And that is what makes this whole conversation impossible to ignore. That is also why the Angel Reese angle got so much attention. Not because the source proves Angel Reese literally said she was furious. It does not.
Just when we thought Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark saga was over, no beef, no nothing. Oh man, footage is starting to hit the internet, man. So basically, there is articles starting to come out as of right now about Angel Reese ignoring Caitlin Clark, pretty much not showing her any love during that last matchup. Now, Angel Reese ignores Caitlin Clark multiple times in Team USA win, and video proves it, bro.
But because the comparison is brutal, the same wider women's basketball world that spent months trying to argue Caitlin Clark was not the main draw suddenly had to watch Team USA become a ratings event the second Clark put that jersey on.
And I did see that the MVP did come out, and guess who it is? Caitlin Clark! Wow! They also did an All-Star 5, which consists of Megan Gustafson, Cecilia Zandalicini, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Plum, and shocker, 4 out of 5 play for the WNBA. FIBA has really been promoting Caitlin. They were showing so many highlights on their socials, and I think that it was a very good decision because honestly, she may not have scored the highest points in every game, but her impact on the game and the tempo that she creates in every game and the excitement that she creates in every game is undeniable.
That is where the real story starts. Because before Clark ever touched the floor, there were real questions. 8 months away from competitive basketball is not a small layoff. There had been injuries, missed time, and an entire stretch where fans were left waiting. There were questions about rust, questions about timing, questions about explosiveness, questions about whether she would need a few games to look like herself again. That is the context people need to remember. This was not just another debut. This was a return after a long silence. Fans had spent months waiting to see whether Clark would still bend the game the same way, whether the passing vision would still be there, whether the pace would still feel different, whether the gravity would still show up the moment she crossed half court. And then she checked into the Senegal game. That was it. The entire tone changed. In 19 minutes off the bench, Clark finished with 17 points and 12 assists. The source also says she had 0 turnovers in the first half and broke 5 FIBA records before even hitting the 20-minute mark. 2 of those records stand out the most. Most assists ever by a bench player in FIBA history, and most assists in a Team USA senior national team debut, men or women. That is not hype. That is a historic first impression. But the numbers only tell part of it. The real proof was in how the floor looked when she entered the game. Clark was reading the blitz before it arrived, turning pressure into transition, finding cutters in rhythm, and hitting shooters exactly where they wanted the ball. The offense looked faster, sharper, more connected. The second she stepped on the floor, Team USA looked different. That is why the rust conversation died so fast. It was supposed to be understandable if Clark looked hesitant. It was supposed to be reasonable if the timing was off. Instead, she walked into international basketball after 239 days away and made the entire game look simpler for everyone around her. That is not normal, and that is why so many people immediately started asking the same question. If she was clearly changing the game that much, why was she still being used like just another piece? That tension sits right in the middle of this whole tournament. Clark comes off the bench, breaks records, changes the pace, makes the offense more dangerous. And yet the team still did not immediately hand her full control. That is the frustration. The numbers on the floor were pointing one way, while the rotation decisions sometimes seemed to point another. And that is the basketball argument here. Not that Team USA was bad, not that Clark had to take every shot, but that when she ran the offense her way, the results were obvious. The pace improved, the reads improved, the spacing made more sense, and the team became much harder to guard. The Italy game felt like the clearest proof of that next step. Clark was at her most efficient in the Italy blowout. That was the game where the offense was built more around her strengths. The 3-guard look with Clark, Paige Buchers, and Kelsey Plum looked dangerous. Italy had no answer for it. And that matters because it changes the story from one hot game to a real blueprint. This was not just Clark checking in, getting hot, and creating one viral box score. Across the full 5-game sample, the source says she finished with 58 total points and 32 assists. She averaged 6.4 assists per game, which led the entire tournament. She played 21 minutes per game as a bench player, which was a Team USA high. She also led Team USA in 2-point percentage, free throws made and attempted plus-minus, and efficiency. Those are not nice return numbers. Those are, this player is controlling the tournament numbers. And the plus-minus point matters. When Clark was on the floor, Team USA became almost impossible to compete with. That is one of the cleanest ways to cut through role arguments and minutes debates. Whatever the rotation said, the impact said something else. Now bring that back to the ratings conversation, because this is where the Angel Reese title makes emotional sense, even if the stronger factual case is really about audience power. The source argues that Clark's Team USA return pulled viewership levels that embarrassed the numbers from Unrivaled and silenced the idea that interest in women's basketball is spread evenly across all stars. Its point is simple. The second Clark came back, the audience jumped. That is the uncomfortable part. It is one thing for Clark to play well. A lot of people can shrug that off and say, she is talented. Fine. But when the ratings move with her too, that becomes a different conversation. That becomes market power. That becomes proof that fans were not just waiting for women's basketball in general. They were waiting for this player. And that is why this tournament felt bigger than Puerto Rico, bigger than qualifying, and bigger than one record list. It felt like a reminder that Caitlin Clark is not just a scorer. She changes tempo. She changes spacing. She changes what defenders panic about. She changes how teammates get the ball. And according to the source material, she changed the size of the audience too. That is a rare kind of influence. Then came the final stamp, Tournament MVP. At that point, the award almost felt like a formality. The debut already told the story. The full tournament numbers already told the story. The ratings already told the story. The only thing the trophy did was make it official. So no, the biggest takeaway here is not whether Angel Reese personally liked any of this. The biggest takeaway is that Caitlin Clark came back after 239 days away, came off the bench, broke records anyway, won MVP anyway, and dragged the sport's attention right back toward herself anyway. That is what really happened in this tournament. And if Team USA truly learned from it, the next step is obvious. Stop treating Clark like a piece you need to carefully blend in. Build around what she does best. Let everybody else benefit from it. Because every time this tournament gave Team USA a choice, the same answer kept showing up. When Clark touched the ball, the offense got better. When Clark played, the numbers got bigger. And when Clark returned, the whole conversation changed. So let me ask you one more time. Did Caitlin Clark just prove she is the biggest needle mover in women's basketball? Comment yes or no.